I love a good childhood ruining conspiracy theory video. I think they are super interesting to talk about because, first of all, I love nostalgia. Second of all, I love conspiracy theories. So it's kind of combining two of my favorite things. And ruining your childhood always just hits different the older you get, you know? So without further ado, let's get into the different childhood ruining conspiracy theories. Alright, the first theory that we're going to be talking about has to do with Hannah Montana. So I fucking loved Hannah Montana as a child. Obviously, I wanted to literally be Miley Cyrus so damn bad, and honestly I kind of still do. But nonetheless, there is a dark theory that Hannah Montana was actually just a euphemism for Miley Stewart's split personality, and she actually suffered with dissociative identity disorder, aka DID, and Hannah Montana was actually just an alternate personality and not actually a real celebrity, but it was kind of all in Miley's mind. So the expanded breakdown of this theory is that Miley the entire time of Hannah Montana is switching between these two different personalities. Sometimes she even loses track of who she actually is and things that Miley would actually do. And of course, her entire family and friends just playing along with this, possibly reinforcing the delusions that Miley Stewart is having. Something that I feel like is important to note with this is that Hannah is actually kind of a stronger and more confident, more dominant character than Miley Stewart. So is this Miley's way of just using a character, and apparently a lot of DID patients kind of feel detached from their real selves, so they will have one of these alternate personalities that are more technically them, if that makes sense, but kind of the person that they're afraid to be. So is Hannah really just the person that Miley is afraid to admit that she is this confident person, but she has, you know, these anxieties that are holding her back? I think it kind of makes sense. It's interesting because was Miley truly struggling with a real mental disorder throughout the entirety of the series? And is the entire show just kind of a metaphor for losing control of who you actually are? And kind of fighting between those two characters of someone who is much more shy and sort of introverted versus a literal pop star who is just confident and famous and knows what she's doing, knows what she wants, very dominant personality. Could that be the case? I think it kind of makes sense. I've always thought that Hannah Montana could have some really extremely strange theories surrounding it because obviously, like, the whole concept of having sort of a split personality within a show is going to naturally have some conspiracy theories to it. But I do think it makes sense because it feels like Hannah and Miley's personalities are so different, but at the same time, it's almost like you can see Hannah trying to escape when Miley is just being Miley. So is that her true self? Is Hannah what she truly feels like she is? I don't know. I honestly think there could be case studies based on Hannah Montana as a show because it's interesting as hell. I've always thought it was a very interesting theory, and I know it's probably not supposed to be that interesting and it's supposed to be more lighthearted, but something about it has always felt kind of dark to me. The next theory I want to talk about has to do with iCarly, and it has to do with iCarly's mom, who is someone that we never know who that is, actually. We've never met her. She's never really mentioned in the show. And there is a dark theory that Carly's mom was actually murdered, which is why Spencer ended up becoming her legal guardian. So some support to this theory is, for one, we never really hear any details at all about Carly's mom. There's not even like vague references much. It's just very untalked about who the hell her mom actually is. We know who her father is. He's in the military, which is why Spencer is her legal guardian. But a lot of people think that maybe the mom died in a very tragic, mysterious way or was potentially murdered. Some people even think Spencer was involved. I don't like to believe that because I love Spencer, but it's an interesting thought. I mean, it kind of makes sense if you think about it because Spencer is a goofy, irresponsible artist, yet somehow he has full custody of his teenage sister. And yes, I understand Carly's dad is in the military, but if the mom didn't die, it just doesn't make sense that Spencer has custody of Carly if the mom was still around. Like, clearly she must be dead. I just thought of a theory in my head that I don't even know if it makes sense. I don't know if it's canon to how the show works. Wasn't Sam's mom, aka Sue Sylvester, in jail at some point too? What if Carly's mom was in jail at the same time as Sam's mom, but they gave birth to them in jail? Is that too crazy of a theory? What if that's how they became best friends, was because they were both born in jail? And then just Carly was obviously given custody to her father, but then once her father went to the military, it was Spencer who was in charge. I don't know. Something about it is just weird because where the hell is Carly's mom? Where is she? There could be endless theories, truly, as to where she could be. Jail could be one of them. That could be why she's never talked about. But something here is definitely off, and it's just so strange to me how there are so many different, like, Disney princesses or different TV shows in general where, like, the parents, where there's no mother, and I've never really understood why. It's very creepy to me. I want to hear your guys' thoughts on it, though, because there could be endless different theories about what happened to Carly's mom or where she is. So let us know your theories below, because technically anything could be true. Because it's a TV show conspiracy theory, so we're allowed to believe whatever we want, you know? Kind of fun. All right, speaking of Miranda Cosgrove, I guess the next theory is about Megan from Drake and Josh, and it's the idea that she was secretly a government experiment. Now, this sounds kind of crazy, but I actually think it makes a lot of sense. So the theory is basically that Megan Parker isn't just the mischievous little sister. She's actually a highly trained government experiment designed for intelligence and espionage. So for one, Megan is way too smart for a child. Like, she outsmarts the adults in her life. She's always building different spy gadgets and manipulating people. And unlike Drake and Josh, she seems to have unlimited money and resources and connections. Like, where does she get that from? How did she do that? I don't know. She's iconic, but I don't know how she did it. Megan also literally never gets fucking caught. And even when she does something so obvious that was like wrong and she was in the wrong, she never gets in trouble. There's no consequences to her actions whatsoever. And a lot of people believe that she was placed in the Parker household as an undercover mission studying human behavior. And I do think that this is an interesting theory because it's kind of funny because, like, the thought of Drake and Josh being her test subjects is hilarious. Like, how long will it take? Because, like, a lot of the time, Megan is just pinning Drake and Josh against each other with them not even realizing that it was Megan doing it the whole time. So it's a kind of an interesting experiment in itself. Do I think it's government related? Like, I don't know. Again, these are just, like, TV shows, so we're kind of allowed to believe and go into any conspiracy theory that we want here. But I do think Megan is just a hilarious character, and I don't know if I necessarily think that she's a secret agent or a government spy, but I want to hear your guys' thoughts and theories on the character of Megan, because she definitely has depth, you know? Which, by the way, a lot of people think the way that Drake and Josh connects to iCarly is that Crazy Steve from Drake and Josh, aka Jerry Trainer, kidnapped Megan, aka Carly, forced her to move to Seattle and create her own life, and maybe that's why Carly doesn't have any parents. Maybe that's why. Because Carly's actually Megan, and Crazy Steve is actually Spencer. I don't like that. I'm not gonna lie, I just don't like that theory. I don't want to know that. Speaking of other iconic Nickelodeon shows, there is a dark theory about Victorious that I 100% believe is true. So we sort of talked about the idea that the School of Hollywood Arts was basically a front for child exploitation, and that it wasn't just a performing arts school, it was actually a way for people in Hollywood to groom and exploit child stars. And I think that this is a true theory, and we've talked about it slightly, but what I think is interesting is connecting the idea that this show is kind of based on Dan Schneider's life. That is fucking interesting. So obviously Dan Schneider is the producer of several different Nickelodeon shows. I'm sure all of your favorite shows were probably produced by him, unfortunately. But he ended up being accused of being super creepy and having inappropriate behavior towards child actors, exploiting them for money, not really caring about their well-beings, etc. There's a lot of different shit regarding Dan Schneider and the treatment of his cast and crew. And it just was never really looking good for Dan, okay? But the idea is that Dan Schneider kind of created Hollywood Arts as a sort of metaphor for his own, like, studio, in a sense. Like, no, even though it's not necessarily a school, if you think about it, Dan Schneider would always take different actors from different TV shows and make them the next star, like different side characters. Like, for example, Megan in Drake and Josh, obviously he ended up taking Miranda Cosgrove and giving her her own show, which was iCarly. And that has always been a pattern with Dan Schneider, for sure. Like, I mean, Drake and Josh came from the Amanda Show, so on and so forth. Amanda Bynes was on all that. It just really goes back, and there are clear patterns here. So is Hollywood Arts kind of a euphemism for being on a Nickelodeon show? And the things that we see these characters go through are, like, kind of real traumatic situations that Dan Schneider is actually putting his actors through. I think that makes sense. Obviously, a lot of the characters on Victorious show signs of serious trauma, okay? That's, like, that's like without shadow of a doubt. I don't think it's that crazy for the idea of one of Dan's shows to be taking some inspiration from his actual life. I think a lot of creators do that. So like imagine Hollywood Arts is actually just like kind of like Nickelodeon as a whole. And it's not necessarily a school, but it's all of these kids trying to compete to be, you know, the next big thing, the next star. And they are constantly being overworked and taken advantage of so they can be exploited and be just like Hollywood child stars that Dan or whoever can use in the future. And it kind of makes fucking sense when you place together the kind of person that Dan Schneider really is, and also just placing together his patterns on every single show and how every single show a star comes out of that show and gets casted into their own show is kind of an interesting theory. And like, you could look at it from the sense of like the character Trina is so like adamant on becoming a Hollywood star. She so wants to become the next big thing. She's very, very like into it, but she doesn't really have that much talent. So does she represent a lot of the people that maybe co-star on different Dan Schneider shows in the past who have and tried to win their way to the top to get on the next big TV show? I think it kind of adds up. It just does. And then you also see a bunch of people on the show who have so much talent that are just like not really paid that much attention to. Like Andre, Jade, like those people I feel like had way more talent than Tori herself. But at the end of the day, Tori was like the star. And she was from Zoe 101. Like Victoria Justice was literally on Zoe 101 as like a co-star. And it's just an interesting concept that it really wasn't a performing arts school, but really just grooming and exploiting children to be the next big star on Dan's other TV shows. And that's like legitimately what happened and what has been happening for years, because then out of that came Sam and Cat. And obviously out of that came Ariana Grande as a whole being like the biggest celebrity ever. So I do think that it is an interesting concept, and I want to hear your guys' thoughts on it, because I think this theory has a lot of potential to be like something really true, because something about it is just strange, and just the way that Dan Schneider, obviously being accused of such creepy and inappropriate behavior towards his actors, it just all kind of adds up in a way that I don't like, and I want to hear your guys' thoughts. The next theory that we're going to be talking about comes from the Fairly Odd Parents, and it's a theory that Timmy Turner is actually in a mental institution. I think this theory makes a lot of sense. It's essentially the idea that Timmy's fairy godparents aren't actually real. They're just hallucinations created to cope with his traumatic life in a mental institution. A lot of people have a couple different theories as to who Cosmo and Wanda truly are to Timmy. Some people think that they are nurses or therapists that are helping him through his delusions. Other people think that they are a metaphor for Zoloft and Prozac because of their colors also match the colors of those drugs, which are antidepressants. I think it's kind of interesting, and all of the events of the Fairly Odd Parents just happen in the confines of Timmy Turner's mind. I think this makes a lot of sense because obviously like the whole idea that fairies exist is like a very mystical thing, so there could be a lot of interpretation here for conspiracy theories, and I just think it's interesting that perhaps Timmy Turner is in a psych ward and is just literally imagining all of this. I mean, doesn't the concept of having fairy godparents make a little bit more sense to be a part of this kid's imagination rather than actual truth? Obviously. But at the same time, it's just a cartoon. I don't know. I really want to hear your guys' thoughts on this because I feel like we've talked about different Fairly Odd Parents conspiracy theories before, because again, when a show is just a cartoon, it's very easy to come up with different theories behind it because technically anything could be true. But I want to hear your guys' thoughts because definitely I think that it was meant to be in this kid's head. Like, I don't think it's really meant to be real, but I want to know your thoughts. All right, the last childhood ruining conspiracy theory we're going to be talking about is the dark origin of Hello Kitty. This is such a creepy ass theory that I had no idea existed. And it kind of ruined Hello Kitty for me overall. Like, I don't think I'll ever be able to look at Hello Kitty the same way. So this is basically an urban legend, and it's one of the most disturbing things I've heard in a while. And it's the idea that Hello Kitty was created by a mother who made a deal with the devil to save her dying daughter. So this theory originated in the early 2000s and basically spread across different online forums and urban legend websites. And according to the legend, in the 1970s, this woman had a young daughter who was suffering with a rare, aggressive form of mouth cancer. Doctors told the woman that there was no cure and that her daughter's condition was terminal. The woman was, of course, desperate and out of options. She obviously didn't want her daughter to die, so she turned to satanic rituals and made a deal with the devil. And basically, the concept is, in exchange for her daughter's life, the devil asked her to create a symbol that would spread his influence globally. And basically, soon after that ritual, her daughter miraculously recovered. And in gratitude or obligation, she ended up creating Hello Kitty. Now, the name Hello Kitty is apparently in some languages translated to Hello Demon, which is kind of creepy, but I haven't really been able to find any proof of this. So the main points of this theory and why people believe this is, for one, Hello Kitty has no mouth, which is unlike most cartoon characters that we see. A lot of conspiracy theorists say that this could be a symbolic reference to the daughter's mouth cancer, either because she could no longer speak and as a way of honoring that deal with the devil, and that Hello Kitty is basically the devil incarnate. And so that's kind of dark. Also, many depictions of occult figures and demonic entities in folklore featured mouthless beings as if to represent silence or submission. So I think that's also important to talk about. Also, allegedly, one of the first ever Hello Kitty designs actually feature her sitting between two pentagrams, which a lot of conspiracy theorists claim is linked to satanic symbolism, although I haven't been able to find any proof that that's actually accurate and that that's the first design of Hello Kitty. There are obviously now different Hello Kitty depictions with satanic things, but that's just from people making them, not necessarily from actual Hello Kitty itself. So the Japanese entertainment company Sanrio that ended up creating Hello Kitty itself was actually created by a woman named Yuko Shimizu, who was 24 years old at the time. She is the first person who ever designed Hello Kitty. But again, according to this urban legend, it was actually someone whose daughter was dying of mouth cancer. I don't know if it's true, but something that I've always thought was creepy about Hello Kitty is that Sanrio actually revealed that Hello Kitty is not a cat. She's a little girl, like wearing a cat costume. So that's a little odd in my head. And also, the character has a blank face so that people can project their own feelings onto her. This is genuinely like the purpose of Hello Kitty. That is why she was created the way that she is so that, yeah, the people can project their own feelings onto her. I just thought, I don't know, something about that kind of freaks me out. I want to hear your guys' thoughts on this though, because I never really thought that there were any dark origins behind Hello Kitty, but it's kind of interesting nonetheless. Anyway, that is it for today's video. If you guys liked it, please give it a big thumbs up. Let us know in the comments below what you guys think of all of these childhood ruining conspiracy theories. Are there any TV shows or movies that you want me to talk about in the future childhood ruining videos? Let me know. But that is it. Make sure you follow me on Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram, and subscribe for new videos every week, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.